Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome to the next edition, the last edition of STATURDAY Chat Live for 2023 here on December 16th, 2023, of course. So, if you are a college student out there that is done with the semester, congratulations on finishing up this fall semester. Good for you. I'm so happy. Hope you have done well and you are able to relax a bit over the next few weeks. That's what I plan on doing. So, of course, this is going to be the last live stream of 2023, and then we'll pick back up in January. So, I'm going to take a few weeks off, of course, to be with my family during the holidays. We're actually doing some Christmas stuff actually today. And then, of course, New Year's and all that kind of stuff. So, we'll be back on the live stream in early January. I'm not sure which weekend that will fall on quite yet, but I will definitely let you know. So, just obviously, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do that. Click that bell notification, and then that will alert you whenever the live stream is posted the week it's going to be broadcast on that Saturday. So, yeah, so 2023, what a year it has been. It has been just a crazy year with, of course, all the AI stuff and everything else that's going on. And, we can talk about that today if you want, and we'll see sort of where it goes. Of course, if you are new to the stream, this is kind of how this works. I go 30 to 45, 60 minutes maybe, depending on how the conversation goes. So this live stream feeds off your comments and questions that you put in the chat instead of just listening to me blab all the whole time. So make sure you do that. Of course, I love knowing where you are watching from. So please put that in the chat as well. Let me know where you're watching from. That gives me an idea of the scope and kind of where you all are at and stuff like that. So yeah, so 2023 has been a crazy year. So the AI stuff is the dominating story, of course. And I think we are all, if we work in data science and statistics and analytics and stuff like that, are all versed in what is going on in that space. And I think it's very incumbent on us to stay on top of those sorts of things in this field. It has such far-reaching impacts, not only in our daily life, but also those of us who work in the data space. So it's something we will always have to keep an eye on and keep learning about sort of as we go forward, So that's going to be my goal going into 2024. Sort of my New Year's resolution is really just to keep doing what I am doing in terms of learning about the AI stuff, learning about the AI tools, learning a bit more of the coding in the background on them. I've done some of that, but learn more about that and just keep moving forward. I think that's my New Year's resolution. So if you have a New Year's resolution, feel free to share it in the chat and we can talk about that sort of as well. All right. So, hello. Edisomoju, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Again, I do my best to pronounce everyone's names the best I can. I'm sure I don't get them all right, but I do my best because you deserve that. So it's good to see you. Hope you are doing very well. Thanks for stopping by the live stream. Appreciate it. So, as I mentioned in the last 2 weeks, I guess, the live stream, I'm gonna be working on some new content over the new year. So I could talk maybe a bit more about that today and kind of get to what maybe your feedback and what you think about it. But the basic gist would be something like this. I haven't finalized it yet, but it will be something like this. So right now I'm calling it Machine Learning for Mere Mortals. And it is sort of geared towards individuals who are new to the ML space. I'm going to do it in my way. So I obviously have a way of teaching and a way of explaining things. So I'm going to continue in that vein as far as the way I see and learn and explain things. So hopefully the first few videos will be out at the beginning of the year. I kind of have an idea about what they're going to be and how I'm going to make them a bit different than maybe what you have seen in other spaces. The problem with machine learning educational content is that there's already so much that it's hard to do something different. It's hard to be unique in that space. So I'm going to try to carve out a niche in that sort of machine learning space that is unique to me. And the goal of this is that it's not going to be really any code or anything like that. It's really geared towards individuals who have kind of been afraid of learning about it and have sort of shied away from learning about it and just kind of want a general overview of what the concepts are and sort of how they work. The tools we use will be free. So it's going to be open source software based. It's going to be visually based. and we're going to go over sort of the main topics and concepts in machine learning in a way that I see them. So I'm going to approach it that way. That's going to be the goal. So look for the first few videos to come out in January, and then from there I'll kind of adjust and kind of see where everything is at. But I have those first few already sketched out pretty much. I have the data sets I'm going to use ready, and I have a informal storyboard about what's going to happen in those, and so on and so forth. So look for that new content coming out over the break and in the beginning of January, and we will see how it does. And if it's useful to people, then we'll keep doing some more. And if it's not, then we'll pivot and do something else. That's the nature of YouTube nowadays. You just have to stay on top of trends and look at your analytics and see what people are benefiting from. But when I envision this new type of content that I'm going to work on, I'm really thinking of someone who they could be at a high school level that are trying to learn about this stuff. On the flip side, there could be someone who is a bit older, like my age or a bit older, who has wanted to learn about these concepts but has shied away from doing it because they think, oh, machine learning is going to be a bunch of code and a bunch of stuff that I don't really understand, and I'm scared of it. Or students maybe in other parts of the world that don't have access to educational resources or whatever for various reasons, and I want to gear it towards them so they feel included, they feel recognized and seen, and they have quality educational content in this machine learning space that helps them learn. So that's sort of my audience. Obviously, if individuals have a lot of experience, they have a lot of knowledge in this sort of space already, this is going to be very elementary and rudimentary for those people. It's probably not for them, but that's the goal, at least for me, is to really help out learners who have been intimidated, afraid, have not been able to find the resources they want, and maybe they're younger or even older and they've shied away from learning it. So that's my goal. That's my personal goal. Okay. So first few videos probably out in January, so keep an eye on that. And I'm going to be working on those over the next few weeks. That's the plan. All right. So what's up with you all? I'm going to grab a drink. Somebody start the chat. Let's get going. My fruit smoothie. I had a good exercise session this morning, so having my smoothie, off to a good day. Doing my family Christmas today, later, so I'm trying to get everything going. But let's talk real quickly about 2024 and looking forward in the space we're all working in terms of data science, machine learning, AI, and stuff like that. So I really, really think that the things we see now that's happening in the AI space and related sort of spaces, what we see now in December of 2023 is going to look like the Flintstones, some sort of fossil compared to what we're going to be seeing in December of 2024. So it's all going to happen so fast. Obviously with Google's release of their Gemini models, and then of course, I would guess there's been a leak, whether it's official or just fake or not. You don't really know nowadays because of the way they promote things. I would expect ChatGPT 4.5 to be released any day now, or the next few weeks at least, if the leaks are true, which is going to bring a whole new host of capabilities. So we are I'm not one for hyperbole and too much exaggeration unless I'm telling a joke or something like that. But in my normal state, I'm not really into exaggeration and aggrandizement and stuff. But we are really in a humanity-defining time right now. It's discovering fire and inventing the wheel and the first antibiotic and all that kind of stuff. Those monumental moments in human history, we are living in one right now. And we're going to continue to live in them, as we go forward over the next few years. It's what a time to be alive, for better or worse. So I would encourage everyone, I'm sure a lot of you already are, encourage all of us to stay on top of all this stuff. You really have to be, we all have to be continuously learning all the time. Like you can't stop. You know, always have to learn new things over and over again. So, um, yeah, we just have to like, keep on the train. All right. So we can talk more about that in a second. Khalil asks, "Hello, Brandon. Just to follow up for your machine learning videos, what are the prerequisites to follow along? Very little. So obviously, it will help to know a bit of statistics and stuff like that, but you don't have to have super advanced things. Now, when we explain things like linear regression and logistic regression, it's going to help to know sort of what those are. So I would say a basic understanding of statistics is probably good enough. But other than that, I'm going to try to keep everything very simple. You know, build it up in layers, you know, as I do, as you've seen from my other videos. So I'm going to try to really make it conceptual based and like idea based and stuff like that without getting too far into the weeds. So if you've had some statistics, that is going to be good enough for what I'm doing. You know, there might be some more advanced stuff later on, but at first, all you're really going to need to know is some basic statistics. You know, have a computer to use to follow along, and things along that nature. All right. So apparently, I'm the only one following your video on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a lot lower than YouTube. That's just sort of the nature of LinkedIn. So, you know, LinkedIn is more business type based, but I have the creator account on there, so I go ahead and stream to LinkedIn too. But obviously, the most viewers are going to be on YouTube at any given moment. So, let's see here. I learned about forward and backward selection models. My professor stated that if we go with the forward selection model, we will not always add at least one covariate to the model. Why is that? So I'm not sure what you mean by adding a covariate to the model. So in these model building methods, all we're doing is adding or removing variables through some iterative process by allocating the sum of squares to those variables and saying as we add those variables whether or not the sum of squares explain changes enough to justify having that variable in the model or having that variable removed from the model. And there are other measures that can be used to compare, obviously AIC, AICC and the BIC and stuff that can be used to compare models. But all we're doing in those sort of methods is building up a model of variables, whatever those happen to be, and seeing how the sum of squares changes. If it changes in a magnitude that's enough to keep that variable included. Now, of course, one of the things about these models is that if you keep adding variables, they will keep explaining more variation, but that's not the way to do it, because at some point that levels off and then you stop adding variables because they're not really adding anything additional to the model, okay? So my nose itches. My nose always itches on this live stream. So that's all we mean by forward and backward. So what your professor is saying here about we will not always add at least one covariate to the model, I'm not exactly sure what you're getting at about that. So, but of course, of those methods, right, of those methods that we usually use, so forward selection, backward elimination, then we have stepwise, which is a combination of those, and then best subsets. Those are all methods used to essentially, the way you can sort of see this whole thing, Amina, is that what we're trying to do is find out what set of variables explain the most variation in our dependent variable with up to the point where adding additional variables doesn't add anything else. So all those variables they're like a vacuum cleaner. And those variables are a vacuum cleaner that sucks up all the sum of squares. And at some point, the vacuum is full enough and there's nothing left to gain. So we stop adding variables or we stop removing them or whatever else. And of course, in those situations, what we're trying to do is find it's parsimony. We're trying to find the simplest model that explains the most variation or takes up the most sum of squares in the model. And that's all those model selection methods are. They're not perfect. So, some of those methods, like everything in academia or anything really, nothing's perfect. There are characteristics of those processes that people criticize and whatever else and so on and so forth. But these model building methods are just a tool to help explain what's going on inside of our data. That's all they are. So I would just think about those methods that way and how those models are built up using those sort of methods. So obviously in my playlists on all those methods, I went through a lot of that in very, very fine detail, including like how it's related to partial correlation and stuff like that. So if you need to, you can go back and watch those if you haven't seen those or haven't seen those in a while, review those. But that's the general idea. And that's the general idea for a lot of these methods. So when they're like linear based like that, we're trying to account for the total sum of squares in that model, the total sum of squares, and allocate as much of that to the model and as little of it to the error to the point where we have diminishing returns. And that's really all we're doing. That's the simplest way to think about it, okay? So, all right. Thank you. Understand it now? Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, those model building methods that we talk about, forward, backward, stepwise, best subsets, that's a different process than what we would have in model building and machine learning. So it's a different way of thinking about it. Like traditional statistics is based on the idea that our data sets are smaller and they're harder to get, and we're trying to make an inference about a larger population. Whereas the word model gets a bit gray area there. We talk about models, regression models, or machine learning models. We're just trying to somehow map out the underlying connections and structure within a data set. That's a little bit different. So these terms aren't always perfect, and the processes that we use aren't always in one camp or the other. There's a lot of overlap and gray area, and the terminology can get very confusing sometimes. But just think about all these model building methods in regression as just a tool in the toolbox. Just like in my garage out here, I have a bunch of tools to do different things, and sometimes I use one tool to do something, and sometimes I need like 5, but they all contribute to whatever task I'm doing. Same idea. Okay. But fundamentally, in these linear models, we're trying to allocate and explain the sum of squares. All right. Hope that answered some of your question. Nalati 2, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Hello. Where can I start machine learning from scratch? Well, if you are just joining, a good place to start machine learning from scratch will be my new videos coming out at the beginning of the year. I'm excited about doing those. And so you can basically, as long as you have some statistical knowledge, some knowledge about stats, okay, then you'll be able to get at least what I'm doing, all right, what I'm going to be doing. So that's the place to start. Of course, there are many places on YouTube, of course, that you can find. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of people doing machine learning videos on YouTube. So that's obviously free. All I have to do is watch ads, I guess, but that's free that you can watch. So there are other paid sites like Udemy that has machine learning courses, of course, and probably Coursera and edX and Maven, and Dave Langer has stuff, and so on and so forth. So there are many resources that you can do. So I would just start there. And I think it's important too when you're learning something like that is to find the resource or the person or whatever else that explains things in the way that you best understand. So the way I explain things are good for some people, but it may not be good for someone else. You know, and the way StatQuest, Josh on StatQuest explains things. Some people may like the way he explains things versus how I explain them, or anybody else for that matter. So find the one that works for you. So that's what I would encourage you to do. Right. Oh, yep. So free resource website. Yeah. So YouTube is obviously the best place. YouTube is the biggest university on earth. So that's always a good place to start. And you can kind of go off the comments and stuff like that and the views, whether or not it's something people find valuable, assuming it's been up for a while. Obviously, newer content isn't going to rack up big numbers. Okay. Prajwal asks, I need to learn advanced ML concepts. Okay. Where should I find those? Well, what do you mean by advanced ML concepts? Do you mean the mathematics? Do you mean the coding? What do you mean by advanced ML concepts? That would be a good place to start to know. So I think a lot of this changes so fast. Some of the best, I think the best place I found to learn a bit more the guts and stuff is there's some really good Udemy courses that go into more of the code and stuff like that. I'll also say I have a good book over here if I can find it that I would recommend. Where have I put it? There it is. Ooh. Now this is not free, all right? This is not free. You'll have to pick it up. But I found this is a good book. If you're looking to get a little bit more into the weeds of things. So it says machine learning with Python for everyone, which is true. But I would say it's a bit above the everyone level. And it goes into a lot of detail. So Prajwal, I would suggest maybe finding this book here and taking a look at that and seeing if that suits your needs. All right. So everything is really in here, from pipelines, feature scaling, algorithms, and so on and so forth. So this is one I would recommend. Okay. It's a good book. I read the whole thing last year or something like that. So that, and then that's to also be honest. Just ask ChatGPT or Bard or one of the LLMs. Just ask some of the LLMs. So obviously they have a bunch of knowledge about these sort of topics because they are built on top of these topics. So just go into ChatGPT or Bard or whatever else and just start a conversation. I do it all the time. If I'm looking to get started or I need like just some concentrated information about a specific topic, I will go into GPT or Bard or whatever and ask. So that's a good place. Now, is it free? I think it's, there are free versions of those. Bard is free, I think. Yeah, Bard is free. But yeah, the LLMs are good places to learn. All right. I think here. So you said the algorithms. Yeah, so that's, if you want to get, the algorithm can be seen as code or the algorithms can be seen as math. And I know those aren't necessarily the same thing, but there's some overlap there. But I guess what I would encourage you to think about is learning these things to what ends. So are you going for a master's or PhD in data science or machine learning or something like that? Then of course this would be pertinent. is it or is that necessary to do just a day job or whatever else? Maybe not. So it's match what you want to learn to whatever ends you want to put them to, and then figure out how deep into the weeds you really want to go and get into the nitty gritty. Because, and this is only my personal opinion, of course, there's a point where learning all that stuff kind of, at least for me, hits a ceiling, because that's why we have computers. You know, we have machines and computers to do all those things for us, and all we need to do to understand is sort of the basics of how it works, how to interpret it, how to set it up, and so on and so forth. So it's a trade-off, right? But yeah, that book is good. Any of the LLMs are going to be probably pretty good because they were built on a lot of, Stack Overflow content, and I'm sure other content that is high quality. So yeah, you can look there. Yeah, being resourceful right now is one of the highest skills, if not the highest skill anyone can have. We have access to so much information, so many tools, and we have to be quality consumers of those resources. So being resourceful is probably right now, because we have access to so much, one of the most valuable skills, right? So sometimes you just have to dig around and find out what works for you. And Prajwal, I have more books over here, but I don't want to go diving off to the bookshelf. But if you're on LinkedIn, just hit me up on there, and I might be able to recommend some other stuff for you that I have scattered over here on the bookshelf. Okay. All right. Actually, your explanations, examples are very useful in exams. I need reality where we can do in industry projects. So like more hands-on, type stuff that you're really looking for, so obviously sites like Kaggle, of course, and there are similar ones. I think the one's called what? Data Wars? Yeah, Data Wars. So there are websites that are set up specifically that are project sort of based, where you can work on a project that has some sort of more real world application that you can then take out into a job or industry or whatever else. Now, some of that stuff is going to be very industry specific that you will not really get into until you're actually working in that sort of industry. So I think the idea of education in general is to provide a general roadmap, a general, sort of concept scaffolding that's general, generic, that you can then apply in various sort of settings. That's kind of the idea of, public education or broad education. So if you want to look for more realistic type data sets and so on and so forth, you can look on the websites I just mentioned, or you can do your own. You can find your own data and download it or whatever else from a government website or some other repository that has data, built-in data sets maybe. Sometimes you can find ones that are similar to what you're trying to do, and then use that as sort of a proxy for the more reality-based project you're looking to implement. So sometimes you just have to piece it all together, and again, be resourceful to find the data or find the projects or whatever else that's more applicable to what you're doing either in your career or whatever else it might be. So that's sort of my 2 cents on that. But don't discount being your own resource by going out and finding the data or going out and collecting the data and setting up your own projects that's relevant to whatever it is you're interested in. Excuse me. So as an example to that, one of the lessons we're going to do in my new machine learning series is we're going to do that very thing. So we're going to go into Excel. We're going to use its web connectivity and different data types to go out and get live data into our Excel spreadsheet. Then we're going to, massage that data a bit, and then we're going to use that data to build some machine learning models. But we're starting off with a completely empty blank spreadsheet. And then we're going to go out and get the data that we want to use using the functionality inside of Excel. So that's what I mean about going out and being resourceful enough to, in some cases, find your own data and apply it to whatever you want to do and learn. Okay. So yeah, it's hard sometimes to get those sort of data sets and examples that are practically relevant to anything specific, because again, in education, in general, we're trying to be broad, kind of a broad way of seeing things that you can then apply when you get to a specific company, a specific field, whatever else it might be. Okay. All right. Thanks. You are very, very welcome. Glad I could help. And I will say one thing as well, back to this question here, is that I preach on this channel and on these live streams that you always have to be well versed in your domain, in your discipline, outside of just data analysis, statistics, machine learning, yada, 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 yada. You have to have the sort of that domain knowledge, the broader scope, as well as the more technical and mathematical type stuff. So obviously, if you are working in finance or medicine or agriculture or whatever, it's not enough to just tap on your computer keyboard and run, write your Python scripts and like get your output or whatever else you're doing. That sort of thing can and will be done automatically by machines, as we are finding out now. The harder thing to replicate is someone who is steeped in the broader knowledge of the discipline they are working in. So if I'm working in agriculture, I'm interested in applying, data analysis and machine learning and, and analytics and stuff. If I'm interested in applying that stuff in like the field of agriculture, for example, I also need to be reading or learning about the broader field of agriculture, especially if it's very local to where I am, right? So reading the paper, reading books, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, watching documentaries, going out and talking to people in those fields. If there's a business owner or a farmer or a medical doctor or whatever else that's in the field you want to apply your data skills to, talk to them. See if they'll set up a time to talk with you for like 30 minutes or something like that. Don't demand a whole lot of them, but see if they're willing to talk to you just about the general, flavor, the general gist of what it's like being a practitioner out in that field. And you couple that with your data skills, and that's a superpower. And also understanding the history of what your field is. So reading historical, books, biographies, or whatever else, and having that whole mesh of knowledge that goes along with your data skills. That is the valuable thing that you can bring into any sort of business, any career. Absolutely. All right. Let's see here. So it's very tough to clear all the solutions and practice more and more, but I'm stuck somewhere. Yeah, you have to be a bit more specific. But yeah, it's very common, for that sort of thing to happen. We reach out and talk to individuals or find whatever resource you need in that area that you're stuck, and think about why it is that you might be sort of stuck there. So, if you can provide any specific example, maybe we can talk about that. But it's common to hit, little dead ends here and there that we kind of have to work through. But that's the learning comes from the struggle. We have to struggle a little bit to learn and break out and evolve in our knowledge and understanding. There has to be the right amount of struggle. It's like, again, in the old days of American football, they had what's called a sled. So the player has to push a sled, to get stronger for that pushing force. And they don't do it as much nowadays, but the resistance has to be, it can't be too easy because they just push the sled across the field. It can't be too hard because they wouldn't be able to move it. It has to be just enough, right? That struggle has to be just enough. Like similar vein, like when I go to the gym, I try to get the weights just right, where it's just enough of a struggle, where it's difficult, but not so difficult that I can't lift it or hurt myself. So we all have to kind of like struggle a little bit to push, to break through that next phase. What would the key is keeping that struggle at a right level, so we don't get discouraged or we don't, want to give up or whatever else, or that's not too easy and we're not learning anything. So always look to keep that struggle at the right amount, the right sort of pressure, and whatever it is you're doing to try to get better at. All right, let's see here. Where are we at? 40 minutes, doing good. Doing good. I'm going to check the comments here. So, the industry very slow to pick up freshers in machine learning. Is that a question or a statement? But if that's a statement, well, one, things are kind of hard now just in general, so if you're a fresher that has, a sort of an undergraduate degree or whatever in data science or machine learning, it's not very common to like get right out of that sort of program at school and be put right onto some, high stakes project in a large tech company. That's probably not the way that sort of flows, I would guess. I don't work, in that sort of environment. But over time, that changes as you sort of move up and become more ingrained into that company, into that industry. You have more under your experience under your belt. You have more artifacts you can show. You have more people around you that can speak about your ability to work in that field and the type of work that you do and the quality of work that you do. And then over time, it just sort of builds up. I think that's pretty natural. Evolution of not only machine learning and data science and stuff, but just in general. When you come out of school with a degree, you kind of have to build up some cred or some experience just working in that company. That's pretty natural. But that doesn't mean you can't work on your own projects on the side. So there are many things you can do just for your own learning and experience sort of on the side that you can, work with tangentially to your industry or field, that can inform sort of each other. So just because you might not be getting certain opportunities in the industry like right off the bat because you're a fresher, that doesn't mean you can't be doing your own sort of projects and stuff on the side that might be related to whatever industry you're working in, right? So I do that a lot. So outside of my work time, my 9-to-5 job, I do a lot of things that are related to what I do 9-to-5, but aren't necessarily those exact things. And what I find out is that they build upon each other. And when the time comes in the industry or at work, I'm prepared because I was already doing that stuff anyway. So just sort of my experience from working in corporate America type sort of space. It can be difficult. There's a lot of layers of red tape and politics. and tradition and egos and stuff that exist inside large organizations of all types. And sometimes getting that foot in the door at the bottom can be a real challenge. Absolutely can be a real challenge. So sometimes you have to like throw a few soft elbows here and there to make sure that you have your own sort of space to work. And then over time that pays off, assuming you kind of do that in a way that doesn't, make people angry. All right. What other questions you got? We're going to wrap up here in a few minutes. I want to make sure I want to get to any other last minute questions you might have or comments we can discuss. Here as we wrap up 2023 and get into 2024. So I'll wait a minute or two and see if anyone has any last minute thoughts. But I'll just kind of wrap up sort of my stuff, and we'll see if anybody has anything to say before we go. All right, so again, just to recap, it's been a great 2023 with all of you all. I look forward to next year, 2024. So I'll be doing some more content on some new content in the machine learning space here in January. I'm not sure exactly when in January, but sometime in January, I'll start releasing those. And again, it's geared towards very, very beginners who are just looking to get into this space. Sometimes individuals want to learn about this stuff that they're not even in like data science or stats or machine learning. They just want to know more about it, like just for general knowledge. So what the stuff I'm going to do will be even applicable to those types of individuals too. So, yeah, it's I'm looking forward to 2024. It's going to be a crazy time to be alive with all the AI stuff. It's going to be nuts, for better or worse. It's going to be crazy. But we'll see how it turns out, for better or worse. Hey, Clyde. So during late, trouble with your stream on LinkedIn. Sorry to hear about that. LinkedIn's a bit weird. It's not as smooth as YouTube, so I do apologize for that. Most of my viewers are on YouTube anyway, but I do stream to both for convenience. Excuse me. How do I get an internship as a student? That's a tough one nowadays. When the industry is shrinking, it gets really hard for interns to get a foothold in there. I think it takes a combination of things. I've never had an internship like this type before, but from what I just know and hear and see and stuff like that, getting an internship is a combination of it's as much about demonstrating a willingness to learn and your potential of what you can do. Because I think the right mindset is to go into an internship with the idea that you're going to then end the internship and then be hired on a permanent basis. So I think any internship is a learning opportunity. It's a growth opportunity. And getting one is a combination of your own skill set, your own presence. I mean that in all ways, your own personal presence, your professional presence, and all the things that go along with that. Having artifacts that you can show or projects that you have worked on. And of course, the hardest part of it is that sometimes it just comes down to who you know. So internships are probably, I would say, easier to get through channels of people that you already know. So if you already have existing relationships with individuals who work in certain businesses or certain industries, the skis will be greased for you a bit easier, right? So, sometimes it's easier to be more selective in the internships you might pursue based on if it's in a place or a company or whatever, someone you already know or have a working relationship with, So, and of course, do your research on LinkedIn or wherever else about whatever company you might want to internship with. So currently pursuing an MS in data science. Yeah, so I think at the master's level, a great way to get your foot in the door with internships and potential long-term positions is to work on research projects with faculty at the university. Sometimes the faculty in the department at the university partners with outside businesses. So where I'm from here in Cincinnati, Ohio, the University of Cincinnati, the business school, has tons of relationships with outside businesses that are based here in Cincinnati. Procter & Gamble, Kroger, Cintas, I think whatever else, whatever one's based here nowadays that does a lot of that kind of stuff. Even ones that aren't necessarily based in Cincinnati, but have a strong presence in Cincinnati. A lot of banks, so Fifth Third Bank is based in Cincinnati, and stuff like that. So what I'm saying is there are connections to explore through your university that may not be readily apparent through connections to businesses that are outside of the school, but still work with faculty and students inside the school itself. Because sometimes these outside businesses will come to the business school looking for help with some sort of problem, almost like a consultant type situation that's also a learning opportunity. And the faculty of the school will work on that project and bring students on to work on that project with the outside company. So that might be an avenue worth exploring, because that obviously that exists pretty much everywhere, are partnerships between the university and outside firms and businesses and stuff like that. All right. Da, 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 da. Francis and MNCs. What do you mean by MNC? I'm not familiar with your acronym. Multinational corporation. Okay. Gotcha. Whoop. So I assume you're talking about multinational corporations and the challenges you're faced and what you're learning from that. Is that correct? I will assume it is. So the company I work for, Cengage Group, is a multinational corporation. Of course, we're based in the U.S., but we have operations overseas, a large presence in India, and so on and so forth. So the experience of working in a multinational corporation and our company is relatively small, I think, compared to some of the big ones you hear about, and it's a private company. So I think working in a multinational corporation, just from my own experience, can be exhilarating and also a challenge, both ways. So anytime an organization gets bigger, it's harder to sometimes find your space in it. So like my company is the perfect size. It has operations in different countries, but it's still small enough where you still feel like you individually can make a big difference. Whereas a larger company, sometimes you're just a little fish in a very big ocean. So some of the practical challenges I would say in working in multinational corporations are, of course, the different regulatory environments that exist in different parts of the world. So the company has to adapt to these different environments. Sometimes cultural barriers can be a challenge. Time differences can be a real challenge, as I found out in the past, and so on. So working in these large corporations, these large multinational ones, of course, can be a very complex navigation challenge. But I will say, you can make these large multinational corporations seem smaller by, working in a space that is like a small team. Also helps to get some sort of mentor, whether it's officially or unofficially, in the corporation. It makes it shrink. It makes it shrink. And then you can feel like more You have like more of a smaller space to work in a large corporation, So again, so the company I work for does have overseas operations outside of the U.S., but it's not as extensive as these massive companies that operate all over the globe. So, all right, okay. I think we're about good. So, all right, everybody. So I'm gonna wrap up this live stream. It's been a great 2023 with everyone, especially if you're new. I really appreciate you stopping by, and I look forward to what 2024 holds for all of us. I will say we all have to stay on top of our A game. The AI stuff is no joke, and I say, and all of you all know that. If you're here, that kind of stuff. But it's like, again, like fire inventing the wheel, and like it's one of these moments in human history that are just monumentally transformational, and all of us have to stay on top of it as much as possible without driving ourselves insane, but also learning about it, but also how to utilize it in our work, how to make it better, how to make our work better by partnering with these AI tools, and always just keeping out front. You have to be on the front crest of the wave right now. There's no stopping. There's no laying back. All of us, if we want to be out front and be, in the vanguard of AI and what it can bring for humanity, for better or worse, we always have to be out front. I spend between 3 and 6 hours a day, aside from my day job, just doing AI stuff. Or it's watching YouTube videos, which I do a lot, following along with some code exercises that I've found either on YouTube or other areas, Udemy courses that I have access to, books, podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts because I know if I let up right now for a moment, I'm already going to be behind. So it's just one of those times in life. I'm almost 50 years old now, but it's just one of those times in life where you just have to be fully committed to staying on top of this, of these things. Otherwise, it just blows right past. So I encourage everyone, to keep doing the work, to keep learning about it, stay on top of the news and stuff like that, because this is the real deal right now. And we have to stay sharp, on the edge all the time. Okay. All right. I'm going to get ready and go to my family Christmas this afternoon. But it's been great talking to you all today. And I will see you all again in early 2024, sometime in January. So take care. I wish you all the best and good luck, and bye-bye.